Hey, Jerry, we're live for the third time today.
Third time.
They say
Third time's a charm, right?
Third time's a charm, so let's make this work.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The first time we went live just a little while ago, and you guys don't need to hear all this, I'm sure, but it's just as we grow with podcasting and our show, it's fun, I think, to give you an insight on what kind of goes on behind the scenes. We were sitting here having a great podcast. We were 15 minutes in, and all of a sudden, Steve decides to click the wrong button on his computer, and we were no longer live. And since we are not experts at
splicing and
editing, we decided to start over.
Start it all over.
And then the second time we went live, Jerry is battling a sinus infection, some allergy crap.
And a coughing fit.
As soon as we hit go, big time coughing fit. So, third time's a charm. Here we go.
By the way, I do have a handful of cough drops here. I'm sure that you guys will hear me coughing again, so I do apologize ahead of time for that. I'm sure it will not be the last time this evening that happens. Anyway, how was your week?
Week was good. Got as far as work goes, busy work week. We got 2 more under contract. We got one closed for an awesome family up in Frankfurt. It's going to be their home. Probably not their forever home, but that's okay. That's repeat business. So
absolutely. Those are always good weeks.
Yeah, great week. I made the decision to sell one of my motorcycles, and I think it's going to go away this week as well. So that's cool too.
Possibly this evening?
No, I think that guy's not going to be there.
Gotcha.
And that's okay. But it's a good bike and it'll sell. And the whole point of me selling it is so I can buy a different bike. I'm not reducing my number of motorcycles.
And you've had this one, how long? 3 years?
3 years.
I went with you when you went to pick it up. I remember.
Yeah.
COVID had just started. I remember eating at a restaurant over in Georgetown, and you going crazy on the mask and why.
Oh, no. That was my BMW. I already got rid of that.
Oh, okay.
If that doesn't tell you that I've owned a few two-wheel devices.
That will make 3 bikes. Once you buy the next one, you'll make 3 bikes during COVID.
Yeah, well, you run them hard, you run them long. You just do.
God.
So, hey, welcome Double Infinity and Moki Monster. We're glad to have you guys here tonight. That's
Absolutely. Awesome. Glad to have both of
them. And they weren't here through our mess up, so they think we're still perfect. I love it.
They didn't even have to go through the reboot and all that.
Yeah, so one thing we didn't cover in the first 2, which makes this one even better, is our growth. And what we consider growth to all the big podcasters, they probably think we're funny.
Stagnant.
Yeah. But thank you, Moki. I'm glad it sounds much better today. Woo-hoo! The one thing that we just, it's exciting to see how it grows. And it's Mochi Monster.
Oh.
Chi.
Stand corrected.
We are from Kentucky, and we barely passed English, so we're okay.
Very true.
But we're up to right at 260 downloads, over 7 episodes. We're in 4 different countries, which you were going to bring up something you were going to tell me about.
I think I have figured out our worldwide audience.
Oh.
It's actually all due to one very nice guy in Tennessee, your father-in-law. He's a pilot.
Oh, he doesn't fly international.
And what he's no. I knew that would be your rebuttal. I knew you were going to say American Airlines doesn't fly international, but I've got all this figured out.
Okay.
Mr. Mike is such a great guy. He really, truly is. And he's trying to make us feel good. So everywhere he goes, he is downloading from that city, which is why we've got people from California and Canada and India. And yes, you think that they don't fly to some of these countries. Mr. Mike, in his effort to make us feel good, has kidnapped planes and flown to India, Canada, and a few other countries. Now,
okay.
I'm not for sure exactly how he gets away with it because I've looked for the newscast. He's not been arrested. It's not made the news. But I'm pretty convinced that that's exactly how we're getting downloads from all over the world, literally. Mr. Mike, thank you. We appreciate it.
Well, I'm sure that he will smile that way that he smiles and kind of shake his head at you, I'm sure. And, you know, Jerry said it. India, Canada, Great Britain, we've got at least one person in Great Britain that's downloaded quite a bit, or we've got 6 people who've downloaded once.
6 downloads.
Also, we have invaded the West Coast finally. California, Nevada, all up in the Northeast. Of course, Kentucky is still rocking. We have the most downloads in Kentucky, but it's exciting. If we keep this up at 300, we're probably going to have to break out another bottle of wine.
I've got no problem with that.
So tonight, I have, as speaking of drinking, Jerry is out of commission again. He's drinking Coke Zero.
That's what I always drink.
I'm drinking a new product by Bud Light. It's called Next. It is about the lightest beer I've ever drank.
And it should be 0 calories?
No, it has 80 calories.
0 carbs.
0 carbs.
0 carbs.
So it's less carbs than Mick Ultra, my normal beer, and it's pretty decent. I like it.
So now it's a 0 beer. 0 carb, 0 flavor.
It has plenty of flavor.
If you say so.
Well, I like it. So anyway, last week we talked about having a special guest this week, but it turns out our special guest has decided that going to a wedding of his eldest son is more important than hanging out with us.
Yeah, no. How dare he?
I just can't imagine why somebody would do that. Exactly right, Mochi Monster. Lame. Actually, I'm actually going to the wedding too. It's this coming Saturday. Good friends of the family. Congratulations to Jake, and Ashley on your wedding. Hope it is all that you want it to be.
Absolutely.
So we had to scramble to find some new topics because that was going to be a one-topic deal. Jerry this week is going to cover gun control because, you know, his master, his king, President Biden has demanded that he cover this topic because he is the president.
And what was my rebuttal to that? You're mistaken.
You forgot last week's joke. I don't hear well.
King Trump is now out of office. There is no longer a king.
Oh.
You don't need to bow any longer.
So he's going to talk about gun control. I'm going to do part 1 of a 2-part series. Today's part is going to be a little tongue-in-cheek. The next part of the series, which will probably be in a few weeks, to be honest, is going to be a little more hard into it. But I'm going to talk about the dumb ways the government spends your money. So, and we're just going to come down a list, and you'll be pretty surprised at how all that is working and the dumb things that we actually
spend money on.
Yeah,
maybe. You know, those. When was it that the $1,000 hammers and those things became famous? That was many years ago, right?
Oh, that's when they were building Area 51 because that's how they built it.
So that was a long time ago. So at this point, I don't even know how surprised most Americans would be. We've known for a long time that we waste a ton of money.
You shouldn't be surprised, Jerry. And that's not the angle I'm even coming from. We shouldn't be surprised. We should be angry. We should be fit. We should be pissed off.
Well, what we should be doing is voting out the people who continually do this and voting in some new people. But as long as we continue to re-elect the same people and send them back, guess what? They're probably going to continue to do the same things.
Yeah, you're probably right. And that is terrible. I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
You're getting a little ahead of yourself. How was your week?
Oh, I am getting ahead of myself. My week was good.
That's good.
Week was good.
Glad to hear it.
I got my, anytime that you can, in my business, anytime you get a closing in a week, that's a good week.
Very good week. 52 closings a year, you'd be one happy real estate agent if you could do that every week.
If I could do 52 closings in 1 year, it'd probably be the last year I'd be in real estate.
There you go. new goal, right?
Right,
Figure out how
exactly.
to do this once a week, and I can retire.
Right. So to all of y'all, I need you all, everybody listening, to buy a house from me every week, even if you don't need it.
And you only need 50 of them to do
I
it.
don't need 50, so we're good.
51. We had one this week, so 51 more, and you're good.
That works.
Can ride off into the sunset.
But then, see, if that wouldn't be good for you.
Why?
Because then I would come up with more wonderful ideas like our podcast that I would drag you along with, screaming and kicking.
Well, but here's the deal. You would no longer have the built-in excuse every single time when I prove you wrong, and your excuse being, I didn't have time to do the research that you do. So I would kind of like that. Yeah, guys, come on, help him out. He needs 51 more. That's all he needs.
Prove me wrong?
Every week, week in, week out. Yeah. Every week.
Wow. Okay. You apparently aren't listening to the same podcast that everybody else in the world is. I'm just saying.
Hey, Steve, that's not what they say.
All right.
You're not going to ask me about my week?
Yes. Tell me about your week.
I had an awesome week. Matter of fact, it was so good that my doctor even told me that I have really grown as a person.
Really?
Yeah, that's nice to hear. Well, actually, what she said was that I've gained excess weight, but I preferred the first way that I stated that. Makes me feel better.
Yeah.
Basically saying the same thing, but
I tell you what I did do this week.
what's that?
I finished Obi-Wan.
Nice.
If you like Star Wars, you got to watch Obi-Wan on
I
Disney
love
Plus.
Star Wars, not near as much as you, but
The only reason I have Disney Plus is because of the Star Wars. Obi-Wan was phenomenal. They done Vader so right. I loved it.
very nice.
In fact, I've named most of my kids from Star Wars characters.
There you have.
My kid Luke, he loves it. My daughter Chewbacca, she didn't like it so much. But
Not so much.
if she would just shave occasionally, it'd be all right.
Speaking of Star Wars, I don't know. Did you heard that Han Solo 2 or 3 weeks ago was in town?
No, I
Well,
didn't.
not in town, but close by, Frankfurt. He was at some steakhouse there in Frankfurt. You hadn't heard?
No.
He was. He didn't apparently like it very well, but he was there.
Really? Why didn't he like it?
It was chewy.
So he got his steak well done, like me.
Great way to answer why he didn't like it. He
Yeah.
got his steak well done. Who in the right mind would do such a thing?
Wow.
Who would do such a thing?
So
This week, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I was just going to explain. I was going to bring up next week because
Okay.
next week's a different format than we usually do, and it's going to be a lot of fun. It's what did we decide to call it?
Rapid fire.
Rapid fire. And basically, where normally we have two topics, like today, we have two topics we discuss in depth a little bit. Rapid fire, we're going to take quotes, topics, news happenings that may not be quite big enough for a whole show. And we're going to try to do our absolute best to say a couple of lines about each one. And we're going to go 1, 2, 1, 2, right back and forth. And it should be a lot of fun if it works out. It could be an unmitigated disaster if it doesn't, but we're going to give it a shot. If it works out and you guys like it, we'll be doing that the first Wednesday, the first podcast of the month, every month. And then the week after that, Clay Davis has decided to finally get over his son being married and going through the emotions and finally bringing it upon himself to come hang out with us for a show. So,
And the topic of that one is going to be
surveillance. All the different surveillance that we're under, government surveillance, and who's watching. Who's watching us? Who's watching the watchers watch us, basically. It's a little deep.
There was a television series. Was it The Wire? No, it wasn't The Wire. That was the Baltimore Police Department. What was the name of that show about the guy that wrote the software for the United States government and it was like post 9/11. This was the government's response. They had this company come up with software that incorporated all of the security cameras in the United States and put it under one piece of software that controlled it all. You never saw any of that?
No.
Oh, jeez. I watched that entire thing and now I've forgotten the name of it. It'll come to me. But anyway, that's in 2 weeks.
Oh, Mochi wants to know if we're ever going to cover Roe v. the overturning of Roe versus Wade. And we discussed that.
And we decided probably not.
And we decided probably not. And the reasons are multiple fold. And, you guys deserve an answer if you're asking about the question.
Yep.
It's our opinion, right, wrong, or indifferent, regardless of where you come down on the issue, that we can neither educate or change anyone's mind about how they feel about Roe v. Wade.
Furthermore, to go a little bit broader view, you can't begin to cover one of 50 aspects within an hour show.
No.
So to try to take on that entire topic in 1 hour is just it's untenable. Secondly, like he said, we're not going to change anyone's mind. It's going to have zero effect.
And quite frankly, we're here to have a good time, and we do talk about some hard stuff occasionally, but there is no good to come out of that. There just isn't. And so
actually, there was one that I suggested earlier this evening that I think, judging from your response, kind of got the same response from you.
What's that?
That was when I suggested that we at some point cover January 6th.
Yeah, well, yeah, and here's why. You and I very much are in agreement that was a bad deal. Where we separate there is the severity, kind of where that deal goes. And we think about it in different ways. And we could argue about it. I mean, if you want to do a show about it, let's do a show about it. But in the same aspect, we're not going to change each other's mind about January 6th.
No.
And so.
But we might. I don't necessarily think that we would possibly change somebody's mind. I think what we would probably do, hopefully, is be able to enlighten people on several issues. There's a lot of people who hears 2 or 3, 4, 5 minutes on a newscast for a lot of topics, and that's all they get.
Yeah.
They don't research it. They don't look into it.
Well, let's put it in the books. Let's do it.
Well, we'll see. We'll need some more thought, but
yeah,
possibly.
Also, something we're thinking about doing during our right now time is, and you guys, our listeners, can help out with this, because regardless if you're listening in New York or you're listening in Georgia or you're listening in California, you guys have a mom and pop near you somewhere, and we'd like to help you guys. We'd like to sample your products, order something from you. We'd like to try it out here online and give people our honest opinion.
Sorry, I'm going brain dead for a minute. Brain freeze, I guess.
Well, it happens when you get to be your age.
You mentioned about some. Yeah, exactly. You mentioned about some of the different places people might be from. We covered, I think it was the first taping, not this one. Correct me if I'm wrong. That I believe I've probably figured out where our listeners are coming from, all these different countries. Was that the first one?
No, that was this one.
Okay. Don't need to redo it then. What's for that was the first one?
That's what happens when you. Oh wait, was it the first one?
Pretty sure, but I would swear. I'd rather not do it at all and do it twice.
I think it was this one.
Okay, that's fine. Well, I'll listen to it later, and if I didn't cover it, I'll be happy to cover it next time.
Okay, sounds good. Because we have people listening all over the nation, so
yes, we do.
All over the world at this point,
or at least awesome. Someone flying around, going to different places. Something's going on, right? Downloading from different countries. Yes, they are.
All right, so you ready to get into some topics?
I am ready.
We have literally spent 20 minutes bantering already.
That we have. And you are going to go first this time to make sure to make sure I don't repeat last week, which I took so long, I left you with like 8 or 10 minutes.
Oh, that was fine, because last week we got through what we needed to get through. And, my topic and your topic was something that needed to be said all the way around. Several of our topics were the same, which was really funny because we didn't, you didn't tell me yours and I didn't tell you mine, and we ended up having some of the same best and worst on the same list. Yep. So it worked out well and it was good. So what I want to talk about tonight, and I mentioned it earlier, is just some of the dumb ways our government spends your money and why you should be angry about it. Now, we don't usually toot politicians' horns here.
Very true.
Most politicians, Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, most of you guys are like car salesmen to us. We really do. You can keep shoveling, but we ain't buying. So I think right. I put two things together there, didn't I?
Yeah, but we get the point.
Yeah,
not only get the point, we get and agree with the point.
And here's what I mean by that. Now, I will say that our senator, not Mitch McConnell, Rand Paul, is probably just like his dad when it comes to this topic. He screams to the top of his lungs all the time. In fact, Rand Paul this year is the only senator who has put forth a balanced budget. And as far as I know, he's the only one that's put a budget out, period, for our government. Okay, so let's get into the topic.
And by the way, let me say this.
Sure.
There's several things that I disagree with Rand Paul on in the last 2 or 3 years. I have always been a fan of his for this. He is a fiscal conservative. He has always called out the issues that you're talking about. I remember several years ago when he was talking, I believe it was during an election cycle, and he said, a lot of people says that we are so divided in Washington that we can't get anything done. He said, and I disagree. He said, every single day we are here, we agree to spend money that we don't have.
Right. What led me to decide to do this topic was Joe Biden was on foreign soil this last week and pledged to spend $200 billion that, as Jerry just said, we don't have to help other countries with infrastructure projects. Now, the reason he was doing it is sound. I understand he's trying to curb Chinese influence. And that was what this particular bill was all about. However, what they don't tell you is that $200 billion that we're going to spend, we get to borrow that from China. And then after we've given away that $200 billion that we borrowed from China, we get to, you, me, and the American taxpayers, we're the ones that have to pay the interest on that $200 billion. So let's figure it out a little bit and have some fun today, because it's sickening if we don't. Some of the weirdest things and dumbest things our government spending your money. Jerry?
Yes.
If you needed to go to a medical clinic,
okay,
do you want to go to a medical clinic that has doctors and nurses and people there that can help you?
Sure.
Would make good sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Did
you know that our government has 118 medical clinics scattered throughout the United States? Did you know that?
I did not.
Well, you know why you didn't know that?
Why is that?
Because there are no doctors there, no nurses, and the building is completely shut off except for the power and the water. And we spend $35 million every year to keep those open.
What is the purpose of these?
The purpose was established by they were fake clinics designed to entice bad people, drug people, to come use them and then get nabbed.
Gotcha. 100 of them was needed?
118. $35 million every year for that.
What did it cost to build them?
Oh, who knows? And it doesn't necessarily mean you built them. They could be a leased building that they're just paying the lease on.
Yeah.
For no reason. There's not anyone that works there. It's just an empty building. I know that Mochi Monster would love this one. The federal government every year spends $3 million. Would you like to know on what?
Absolutely.
On understanding what World of Warcraft does to your children.
Okay.
So you play World of Warcraft. They're paying $3 million to 2 universities to study the online actions or World of Warcraft to see how players interact with each other.
Yep, that's some really necessary, needed information, isn't it?
It sure is. You know, he's talking about the ghost clinics, and that was $35 million. That's pretty bad, right?
It's horrible.
Did you know the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs have maintained 100 buildings for years? They're vacant. There's nothing in them, not a desk in them.
And have been empty for years.
For years. You know what the cost of that is?
No.
$175 million every year.
So what's their stated reason for wanting to do this?
Oh, they don't have one in case they ever need it.
Gotcha.
Not that. In today's world where everything's technological, everything's online, brochures and everything.
Right.
The military still prints documents, not to recruit, to their own recruits who have already signed up. Documents to make them feel good about being there. $930 million every year.
It's almost $1 billion.
Almost $1 billion
per year.
I'm going to go on this list one more thing. No, I can't do that one. We spend $500,000 every year to understand and teach Vietnamese male prostitutes how to be safe. $500,000 a year.
Is that a problem? I mean, those are high on my priority list, not yours.
Well, you know, I absolutely do.
Vietnamese male prostitutes?
You would think. You would absolutely think. And this is going to be the best one.
What's that?
I've got several lists. This is the last one on this list I'm going to give you. But this is a brilliant use of money. We spent $2.6 million last year teaching Parliament in UK how to better budget and spend the people's money.
I just wonder what was the impetus. What started that? What made someone think this is a good idea?
And who makes someone think that we're the people to learn that from? You know,
Yep.
That's just dumb. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. So kudos to Rand Paul as he continues to fight this fight. Because, man, if it wasn't for him, we would have no idea some of this stuff. And if you want to know, he actually prints out every year a budgetary waste list. It's called the Pig Book. And we're going to cover some of the Pig Book today because I happen to have it right here in front of me.
For which year?
For this year, 2021. So from last year, the current national debt of last year, would you like to take a gander at what that might be?
I do not know. Huge numbers.
Yeah. The current national debt as of the beginning of 2022 fiscal year, so I guess their fiscal year runs through September. So September 2021.
Okay.
$28.2 trillion. $28.2 trillion. And that's supposed to escalate to over $35 trillion by the year 2031. Less than 10 years from now. That's insane.
Unbelievable.
And in episode, part 2, we're going to get into what those numbers actually mean because I don't know about you, but I don't know what all that really what it all goes into. I can't even begin to comprehend how much money that is.
Well, I Googled it while you were talking about it.
Okay.
And according to the Pig Book is the nickname.
Yeah.
The real name is the Annual Wasteful Spending Report.
Yep.
According to that, for the end of 2022, he gave us an idea of how much money that is. If you took that money and went to the bank and said, I need this money in $1 bills.
Oh,
And you took those $1 bills and you laid them end to end. They're touching. It would wrap around the earth 1,506 times.
That's insane.
1,506 times you could wrap the earth with $1 bills. That's the amount of money we're talking about.
That is insane. I can't even begin to understand that. That's crazy.
It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, it really is.
It really truly is.
So we have a lot of one of the biggest, what they usually call this, when you add programs to a bill that gets passed, that everybody wants passed, and you add spending bills to it, it's called pork.
Right.
Well, we have one of the absolute biggest pork people in the state of Kentucky.
Hal Rogers.
The
king of pork. Has
Oh,
had
my
that
gosh.
nickname for many years.
Hal Rogers, I don't know why Eastern Kentucky is as poor and as languishing as it is. They have the best roads in the state.
They do.
They have the most money per capita in the state. And, that was
When you say the most money per capita, you're talking about
Per
federal
person.
tax dollars
federal.
being spent back
Correct.
per capita.
Yes.
They do.
And now, granted, that area supremely hit with coal. I mean, the fact that the coal markets have crashed and everybody's going away from coal, they needed the help. But to the extent at which Hal Rogers, who, by the way, is on the Finance, Ways and Means Committee, I think he's the chair of it,
And has been for many
and has been for many years.
By the way, before we go any further,
Sure.
for full disclosure, I had a great aunt who taught him in Sunday school at the Elk Spring Valley Baptist Church in Monticello, Kentucky.
Wow.
Sure did.
That's awesome.
When I was a senior in high school, the rural electric cooperatives, the RECCs, had a contest, and the winner, I think there was 35 of them in the state of Kentucky, and the winners of them got to go to a trip for a week in Washington, D.C. I won the Lake Cumberland trip and got to go meet him. Was the first and only time that I ever got to meet Hal Rogers.
Wow.
Mentioned it to him, and he remembered the Sunday school, and he was only 5, 6, 7 years old when he was there. He did remember the church. He remembered my aunt being a Sunday school teacher.
Wow.
Great aunt.
Now, my question, when you met him, did he have like dollars falling out of his pocket? I always imagined if I ever met Hal Rogers, he'd be kind of like the Monopoly guy.
See, there's two reasons why Hal Rogers will never be voted out of office. And by the way, gerrymandering, you know what I'm talking about, when they constantly, and it's a Republican Democrat thing, they do it everywhere. But they try to draw maps so that whoever is in power at the state legislative level tries to redraw maps so that their party wins the most number of seats possible. When Democrats were controlling Frankfort, they redrew his district so many times and finally said, screw it and quit trying, because they figured out that Hal Rogers was unbeatable. Yeah. There's a couple of reasons. Number one is what you just mentioned.
The money.
He gets money sent back. Second, and for that area, probably most important reason he will never be beat, is he never, ever spends a weekend in Washington. He comes back to Somerset, Kentucky, where he lives. He has an office, and if you want to go see him, you go and stand in line, and you can go meet and talk to Mr. Hal Rogers on any weekend. Now, there will 2 or 3 times a year there'll be something big they'll hold the Congress over for a weekend, and he will stay. Other than that, he never, ever. He doesn't stay. He doesn't schmooze. He comes home.
Would you like to know how he can make that happen?
What do you mean?
Be able to go back and forth so easily.
Because the government's paying for his travel? Is that what you're saying?
$2,000 per month to get a direct flight from Somerset to Washington.
He doesn't care because again, guys, I'm not saying this is great to do because he's doing what's right for his constituents, not what's right for the country. He's doing what's right. He's doing what's necessary to get him reelected.
Right,
and
absolutely.
He is really, really good at that.
Yeah.
And also, that's why he became the king of pork. He became chairman of this really powerful committee, and all these people bring all these bills to him, and he's like, okay, well, I can make that happen, but I've got this road back here in Harlem that needs $14 million.
Yeah.
I'm going to tack that on if that's okay. And if it's not okay, then your bill's going to die.
Yeah.
It might see the light of day in 14 years. That's the way he gets all the money spent.
It is.
He's very good at it.
Oh my gosh, is he good at it? He's crazy at it, is what he is.
Yes, he is.
But
sorry to get off on that long tangent. I had no idea you was even going to mention Hal Rogers. No clue.
No, it's fine. Because he is the king of pork. We can't talk about government waste without bringing up Hal Rogers. And it's funny that the one who's the king of it and the one who's against the most of it both come from the same state.
Yep.
It's pretty impressive. So here's another way we waste money. Recently we, much to my chagrin and how we did it, I felt like it was the right time to leave Afghanistan. I didn't like how we left Afghanistan. You and I've talked about that. But
we did need to leave.
We did.
Just not then.
We paid $85 million to build a hotel in Kabul that was never even started.
Yeah.
We spent another $105 million to build a gas station that never pumped 1 gallon of gas. Talking about pork and getting money brought back to your country, Nancy Pelosi's also very good at that. In fact, in San Diego, she got $1.4 billion to add, and this is going to be sounding crazy, 10 miles of trolley in San Diego.
I remember reading about that.
That normally for the entire year will serve 24,000 people. $1 billion. It's crazy. This is me, Jerry. And this would be completely by accident as opposed to you. If anyone doesn't know, Jerry is definitely the tech expert between us two. Our government spends $55 billion a year updating and maintaining outdated computer equipment.
Yeah.
When if they just spent half of that and upgraded, they could save money every year.
Yep.
And next, when we do part 2, we're going to get into the details of how our budget is done and why it makes more sense for these agencies to waste money than it does to save money, and how that all works out. Last year we spent $1.6 billion on vehicles that have never been driven. Trucks, cars, just sitting in parking lots, never been driven.
Just in case we might someday, some reason, possibly need them, I suppose.
And the last one I'm going to do, because I don't want to take up all your time. So last year, as if studying World of Warcraft for $3 million wasn't enough, just to see how we interact with each other. They're trying to learn from our closest known relatives, the primates, the monkeys. They've spent $1.5 million researching their social structures. Couldn't they have called a zoo?
One would think.
And just said, hey, how'd that monkey family work?
Yep. Very true.
These people send it to schools that don't even have access to monkeys. That's why it becomes waste. We also spent $500,000. I know I said the last one. This is the last one. $500,000 last year to understand the mating habits of Canadian night crawlers.
That's important information right there.
I mean, I have woke up before at 3 a.m. just desperate to know the mating habits of night crawlers in
Absolutely.
Canada. So I think that this, and not just the dumb ways that government waste happens, but I think there should be a report every single time one of these stupid projects gets voted on, and it should be flashed all over our nation.
Now, keep in mind, the vast majority of these are just like Hal Rogers' pork bills. They are a small addendum to a huge bill.
Sure.
So if you were to go ask, a minute ago I started to say what we really should do is go get a list of all the people who voted for these. And that's not fair because there's so many people like Hal Rogers that have figured out how the system works.
Right.
And they will take some big important bill that 99% of the people would agree with, and then they'll tack on a bunch of crap.
Oh, I get it.
The only thing I've got to say about that is you can't criticize the people who voted for it because they weren't voting for this little piece of crap bill. We need to give the president line item
I
veto.
100% agree. Also, for my TI4 players out there, we can do the same thing with addendums, and I just got to throw it out. I'm a big nerd and I like big games. So
That's a big game.
Here's the thing. In addition to what you just said, they'll put these big bills out 2 hours before you have to vote on it. So there's no way you can possibly read it. And that is one of the things I'm going to cover in part 2 that should really piss people off.
There's one thing I would like to add.
Sure.
I've told you the story before. You didn't ask me about it. Do you remember the girl that I dated, Patty, whose mother was a secretary, an extremely high-paid secretary,
that's what
$120,000.
That's going to be on part 2.
Okay, then I won't spoil your thunder.
Yeah.
We'll go into that next week.
That goes into why it makes sense for these branches and these agencies
How
all this happens and why it needs to be changed from the inside out.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. In many cases, many of these people aren't trying to waste money. They're not sitting there saying, how can I blow X number of million or billion dollars? They probably have good interest at heart, but what ends up happening is really stupid stuff that just waste an incredible amount of money.
Yeah. So I think this needs to be talked about more, and I give it a thumbs up.
I agree. At the same time, I don't know how to fix this problem, and I don't really think it can be fixed unless we give the president line item veto. The president has to be able to look at a piece, as it happens right now. Congress, when both houses of Congress pass a law and sign it, it goes to the president's desk. He has two choices. He can either sign it into law, or he can veto it. In which case, it goes back to Congress, and they have to have 3/4 majority to override his veto.
Yeah.
Is it 66?
66%.
2/3?
Yeah.
That's okay. Maybe it's 66. Okay. 2/3 majority, veto proof. What he can't do is say, okay, I like 90% of this bill, but you got a couple of stupid things here. That's line item veto. He needs to be able to go through and take out. The problem is many presidents have wanted this and asked for this. They always seem to ask for it at a time when the other party is in control, or at least they don't have the 2/3 of the Senate that's necessary to stop the filibuster, and they can never get it passed.
Right.
So
we also need term limits. Just throwing that out there.
Oh, absolutely. those two things would solve a lot of the problems in this country.
Yeah.
Term limits, expand upon it. Term limits for who?
Everybody.
Yeah. Term limits for Congress specifically.
Congress and the Senate both. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, thumbs up for me. I definitely think this
agree.
needs to be talked about a whole lot more.
I totally agree. It's not going to get fixed unless it gets more airtime.
And unless the people, we the people, get pissed off.
And do something about it.
Yep.
I've said it so many times. As long as we continue to go elect the same idiots that do these crazy things. When we were in retail, if you had an employee who had a piss poor day, you had a couple of choices. You either address it with him and hopefully correct the problem. If not, eventually you're going to start the process of getting him out the door and getting someone else in. But if you don't do anything, that's the same thing as going up to this guy and patting him on the back and saying, thank you, please come back tomorrow and do the same thing you did
If you
today.
don't correct it, you condone it.
Absolutely.
That's how it
Absolutely.
goes. Same thing applies to Washington.
And that's all we do is
Yep.
condone it. By continuing to vote the same people back into office, we're
The
condoning
the way we think about it, well, it's everybody else but our guy. And that's we have to stop thinking that way.
that, and we buy into both sides have got their list of the nuclear topics for the right, for the GOP. It's pretty simple. It's spending, being physically conservative. It's morals. It's the abortion, the gay rights, and all that. And they believe that those are the issues that their party wants them to be active on, and that if they do those, that their party will pretty much forgive everything else and will continue to vote them into office. And you know what? The sad part is, they're right. For the most part, we continue to do exactly that.
Same with
And I
the
say
left.
that, yes, I say that for the GOP. The leftists is the exact same deal. They've
Climate catastrophe is the big one.
LBGT
Yeah.
and all this stuff. Yes, they both have their list of nuclear topics, and they believe that as long as they vote the way their people want, they'll get reelected.
Do you think that? Let me ask you this. Now we're getting a little off topic, and I don't want to take your time.
That's right.
But do you think that people are more divided? I got to try to phrase this right. The American people have always been divided, left, right,
Yeah.
regardless of what those people were called, the Whigs, the Republicans,
Sure.
whatever. But do you think that we have lost the ability to have a conversation with two adults
A little bit.
because of the division that Washington is trying to sow?
Well,
Or is it the people are pushing that into Washington?
you
see what I'm saying?
arguments to be made for both.
Okay.
And first of all, it's easy to sit here and say that we've gotten way, way worse. And in certain ways, we.
I mean, they used to do well, and it maybe, but they used to have duels because they disagreed so bad.
They didn't used to have duels. They used to have a crap load of duels.
Right.
A crap load. Now, we have a lot of shootings in this country. When is the last time that we had politicians that get so pissed at each other they pull out guns and shoot each other? Well, they used to.
I know.
They used to get so pissed off at each other, they would challenge each other to a duel and go stand, how many, 20, 30 feet, whatever it was.
Oh, we're in that part because they pistols wouldn't have been right.
and shoot at each other. Now,
5 paces in turn.
yeah. Now, again, at that day and time, the pistols were so inaccurate that it was rare someone got hit, much less killed. But many people, they did it so often, there was a lot of people that really got killed over this. So it's easy to sit here and say and look around and say, well, this is way worse than it was 20, 30 years ago. And I think it is. I think 20, 30, 40 years ago, it was much better. I think we used to be able to have more civil discourses 20, 30 years ago. But again, if you want to go far enough back in history, there's times when they would talk for a few minutes and then it's like, screw it, just pull some pistols and let's start shooting. So there's arguments to be made about
That would never happen with our audience.
Oh, absolutely not.
Our audience would sit down and have a civil conversation with whomever, whenever, about
Absolutely.
whatever.
And guys, if there's one reason I had to pick of why I do this, it's the hope that can happen.
Yeah.
I think we mentioned before, there's several things. Overall, Steve and I probably, if you were to put all of our political beliefs onto a scale, wouldn't be that far apart. Even so, there's still several things that we differ pretty dramatically.
Yeah. The next topic's one of them.
Absolutely. Mr. Everyone deserves a tank.
Now, I didn't say deserves.
Should
I said if you can afford it and you pass a background check, park that bad boy.
The Constitution guarantees
Park
your right
that
to
bad
have
boy right in the driveway. I guarantee nobody's going to break in your house.
it. Oh, me. The point is, we've never dreamed of getting into a fist fight, much less pulling knives or guns.
No.
And that is my hope, is that we can have conversations and we don't have to agree. We can agree to disagree at the end of the day, and that's absolutely fine.
And I'm on a shameless plug here.
Sure.
If you disagree with what we say, or you have something to add, if you're live with this, throw it. We'll bring it online. If you're not online and you're hearing it recorded, and you're downloading next week,
Email
us. We'd love to hear it. We'll bring it up. Also, your ghost stories. A funny thing we're wasting money on as a government. Any of our old topics, we want to hear your version. So, newsworthy with Steve and Jerry at gmail.com. All one word. So, shameless plug over. Let's talk about gun control, Mr. Liberal.
Not just
Jerry.
gun control, but what I'm going to be talking about is the act that was signed by Biden called the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. Friday, Saturday, I think. That's when Biden signed it. And again, the name is Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, and it's not just in the name, it truly was. The bill was authored by John Cornyn of Texas, Tom Tillis of North Carolina, both stout Republican, long-term conservative Republicans were the two Republicans. The two Democrats were Senators Chris Murphy of Connecticut and Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona. Now, Chris Murphy is, again, I said the first two guys were pretty conservative. Chris Murphy is pretty liberal. Kyrsten Sinema is a very moderate Democrat. Her and Joe Manchin have been the two that have stood up to a ton of Joe Biden's crazy ideas and wishes and desires and have ended a ton of those. So it truly was a bipartisan act. And on 6/25, Biden signed it into law. It was also bipartisan, not just from the fact that the authors, there were two Republicans and two Democrats, but in the United States Senate, there were 15 Republican senators that voted for it, as well as most of the Democrats. And in the House, there were 14 Republican House members that joined the Democrats in voting, for it as well. This thing was really important. One of the biggest reasons is because it was the first major federal let me start all over. It was the first major federal gun safety legislation passed in decades. The last serious one was in 1994. Congress enacted a ban on high-capacity magazines. I should have done research. I have no idea why, but it was done as a 10-year bill. In 2004, it expired and has never been reenacted. So that's nothing to this degree has been done since 1994. And this one doesn't do a ton. One more thing, from a historical sense, the two things that seemed to be the impetus for this happening was the shooting at the grocery store in New York.
Yep.
Followed closely thereafter by the shooting in Uvalde, Texas at the elementary school that just, I don't care who you are. I don't care what your stance on gun control or anything else is. I think most people stopped and said, this is just ridiculous. We've got to do something. And at that point, shortly after, we knew something was going to happen because in an interview, Mitch McConnell said, I am willing and open to see what we can agree to and pass. Huge difference from what he and almost every Republican are normally saying. And sure enough, it did happen. So what changed? What does the act actually do? Not a lot. As far as most people's wish list, it does do a lot. I shouldn't say not a lot. It does do a lot, but not a lot of the big wish list. What it does do is it included billions of dollars in funding for state mental health services and school security. Who can disagree with that? You can disagree about the amount. Maybe, as Steve was talking about earlier, this is, again, money we don't have.
Here's the thing. It's money we may not have, but this is money that I believe our government is there to spend. You see what I'm saying?
Money well spent.
Right. There are certain things laid out in the Constitution that our government is supposed to take care of. There are certain things that we've come to expect our government to take care of.
Yep.
This is one of those things you go out and you get rid of the Nightcrawler surveys and you find the money wherever you have to find it to make mental health a priority.
I agree. Totally agree. Since you said that, I'm going to say something that hadn't decided until now if I was going to cover.
Okay.
I mentioned this to you long ago.
Oh, geez.
You probably forgot it.
Oh, geez.
Obama, at the end of his presidency, he passed some regulations, and it was after the Sandy Hook Elementary School shootings. And it was going to require the Social Security Administration to send records of beneficiaries that had severe mental disability to the FBI National Criminal Background Check System, which meant those people were going to find it almost impossible. There was certain ways that they very possibly could be on that list and still qualify to buy a gun. But pretty much it was going to say if you are drawing money from the government for mental disabilities, you don't qualify to carry a gun. In the first 2 months Donald Trump was president, Congress passed and he signed into law a repeal of that. Could somebody please explain to me why?
Okay, so you're not going to like my answer.
Okay.
But here's what I think. I think Donald Trump was wrong.
And Congress. It wasn't just Donald.
And
Congress passed it and he signed it.
I think that was wrong. Believe it or not. How about that? Woo! However, if you're going to do that, then we can roll it all over into things. And here's what you do if you start doing that and you open that door. All of a sudden now, what else does the government control? They control food stamps. So if you're going to make it hard for this person to be able to buy a gun because of whatever, because of a particular program, because they're going government assistance for mental disability. Right, which I understand. And it's not necessarily on the same degree. But
I don't think it's going to directly correlate at all, but please proceed.
Oh, I will proceed. I very much believe that if you have food stamps, you shouldn't be able to buy Twinkies or soda pop.
Oh, I totally agree.
On food stamps.
100%. Although you're going a totally different direction.
No, if you're going to allow the government to control based on what they give you as a person.
Are you familiar with WIC?
Yeah.
And by WIC, I mean, I'm not familiar with it, but do you know what food qualifies for WIC?
When my kids were born, we depended on WIC in a lot of cases.
And it's no Twinkies.
No, you get the very basics, and it's very specific.
Non-prepared food, and you get to buy beans and rice and meat and potatoes, and you get to go
formula. And
I think that's what food stamps should be. I don't think any of this pizza, steak, and I spent many years in Fredericksburg, Virginia, a suburb of Washington, D.C. There are no Krogers there. Giant is the big food store.
Right. Again,
it's close to the ocean. It's close to the East Coast. Seafood is huge there. It's, here, the Kroger's around here, the ones that has a seafood section, it's 100% frozen. There's nothing fresh. They had really nice seafood sections there. People on food stamps can go and get 5 pounds of crab legs and shrimp and have it cooked. That is absolutely ludicrous. So are the Twinkies, sodas, and all that. I absolutely 100% agree with you.
One of our listeners, who I know, is in the grocery business right now.
Okay.
She also says soft drinks for sure. Probably, I would say that's probably one of the biggest things people buy with food stamps.
I agree. Another thing that you told me a few years ago that we noticed, or you had noticed, that at Kroger, they began putting little stickers, little peel-off stickers on a bunch of items and saying it was, I think, EBT eligible or whatever. And it was prepared foods.
Prepared sandwiches at the deli.
And so I'm sure what it was, they were thinking, a lot of people probably don't even know they could buy this with their food stamps. So they wanted to make sure everyone knows you can buy this with your food stamps too.
And that wasn't just that very specific. I will never forget that. I was in Kroger, and it was Boar's Head sandwiches.
Yeah.
Boar's Head meat's one of the premier meats.
Yes, one of the better, more expensive meat cups.
Yeah. I mean, I understand why Kroger does it. I'd hate to see, I would say that's 40, 50% of their business.
No.
In some areas, I guarantee it is.
In some areas, maybe some, but it would only, in the state of Kentucky, a couple of inner city Louisville stores maybe would be it.
But listen, I'm not knocking people who use food stamps. I used to be one of those people, was raised on it. So I'm not belittling anyone who's trying to use.
Yep.
I'm just saying.
Let's not waste money doing it.
Let's not waste money doing it.
Instead of buying Twinkies, let's give them some flour and sugar and let them go home and bake their cake.
Monsters are also legal to buy on food stamps.
And those things are expensive as heck.
Yeah. It's 100% junk.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mochi.
According to a lot of rumors, bull piss.
Yeah.
Was one of the great Red Bull. Yeah. I don't know about Monsters.
Sorry, totally off your topic.
So, billions of dollars of funding for state mental health. The second thing it did, probably one of the bigger ones, it enhanced background checks on gun buyers ages 18 to 21. So if you're 18 to 21, it makes it a little bit harder for you to buy a gun. If I'm not mistaken, there's a waiting period. You're still going to be able to get your gun. It's not going to prohibit any of it. It's going to slow down the process. And you're going to have to go through some more background checks.
Why would you stop there?
I agree totally. Totally. I'll get to that in a little bit because right now I'm talking about what changed, what the law does.
Sure,
I'm
sorry.
After that, I'll get to what didn't change,
Well,
and
sure.
I'm going to cover that there. There was something called the boyfriend loophole. For many years, if you were convicted of domestic violence and you were a spouse, or if you cohabitated with that person, you were prohibited from buying a firearm. But if you were a boyfriend, girlfriend who didn't cohabitate and weren't married, there was a loophole. You got to do whatever the crap you wanted, and there was no law that would specifically prohibit you from buying, purchasing, owning a firearm. This law that they passed closed that loophole and subjects them to the same. And why wouldn't it? Why would there be a loophole for boyfriends or girlfriends? So I think that one was certainly smart. The next one is really iffy. It provides $750 million for states to enact and maintain red flag laws. It does not require them. It does not mandate that they happen. It simply says if states wish to do it, it's given them money to enact and maintain the red flag laws. Red flag laws are laws that allow family members and our police departments to go in and temporarily take weapons from someone that they have proved to the court is a risk to themselves and others. Now, I'm very aware that that's you're walking a tight line. You really are. But if we want to, in several of the cases of the mass shootings that we look at in the last 10 years, there were many warning signs. There were many cases when people had warned police departments. There were many cases when family members, mothers, had called police departments and said, guys, we got a problem. This is scary. What can we do?
The biggest one I remember was the guy who went into the black church down in South Carolina.
Yep.
And his ma, I
believe it was his mother. You're right.
Had called the police and said, hey, something bad's about to happen. And they pretty much ignored him.
Because there wasn't laws on the books that allowed them to take her warning. That's what a red flag law would do. Lastly, it includes funding for mental health services, school security, and crisis intervention programs. All those are good. I'm not saying that any of those are bad and shouldn't have been done. They are. Let's talk about what didn't change. Red flag laws. They're not mandated. If your state does not want to have them, and you can pretty well bet that if you're a Southern conservative state that typically votes for the GOP, there will be no red flag laws in your state. There just won't. That's the way it will work. All that this did was to set aside money, as we said, for states that want to enact them. Back to the point you asked about earlier, background checks. We increased the background checks for 18 to 21-year-olds, but as you said, why stop there? Statistics says, let me scroll down and find this.
While you're scrolling down.
Yes.
As a CDL driver with a hazmat endorsement,
yep,
which is what I used to be, I've let my hazmat go. I had a background check, a federal background check every 6 months.
Just to drive the truck.
Automatic, just to drive the truck.
But and when I say we're talking about the GOP in this country, has steadfastly refused for every American to be subjected to the same thing, but only not every 6 months, once in a lifetime. If you go to buy a gun, universal background check would say only at that time. Now, again, if you buy a gun every 6 months, you'll have one done every 6 months. But if you have one gun in your life, we're talking about one background check. We still don't have them. 87% of America, according to the latest research, and that's from a Pew Research poll that they do every year, and this one was done in September of last year. 87% of Americans, all Americans, not Republicans, not Democrats, all Americans, support universal background checks. We still don't have them. Third thing, high-capacity magazines were not addressed. They're still allowed. In 1994, as I mentioned earlier, Congress passed a law that prohibited them. It was a 10-year, and it expired in 2004 and has not been reenacted. So, as a result, only in those states, and there are 10 states that have laws prohibiting high-capacity magazines.
What is, I didn't mean to interrupt, but what is their definition of
it depends on those 10 states. It's not the same in every state.
Yes.
So right now, it's kind of like Roe versus Wade, right? So it'd be kind of like saying, well, what are the standards for having an abortion? Well, which state are we talking about?
Yeah.
Same deal here. Now, I can give you the norm.
Okay.
The norm is high-capacity magazines can hold as many as 100 rounds. Standard is 30.
Okay, 30.
What most of the legislation, where they draw the line, is at 10.
Well, that's because I have a pistol that holds 10.
Right.
That's
The
not,
clip.
Yeah, the clip itself with one in the chamber holds 10. So
10 is the most common. Some do 12, some do 15. Any of those. I don't care where you draw the line. Just 100, 30. 30 stupid.
well,
Who needs 30 bullets? When in your life have you ever encountered? First of all, I'm in my mid 50s. You're in your mid 40s. How old were you when you got your first gun? I was around 6.
I bought my first one. I was 18.
I was 6 years old. I had an uncle who had heart problems and passed away. His wife, he had a rifle and a shotgun, and she'd give them to my brother and I. She'd give me the shotgun, and I was, like I said, 5, 6 years old. I went and shot it one time, kicked the holy crap out of me. My brother was smart enough to offer to swap, and I've still got the 22 rifle in my closet. That was the first gun I ever got. So I've had roughly 15 years experience. You, 30. 80 years between us. In the combined 80 years, when have we ever needed more than 12, 15 bullets at a time?
Well, it was that one really squirrely rabbit. I just couldn't. I'm just kidding. I've never, unless I'm target shooting.
No.
But that's not, I'm not.
You still have plenty of time to reload.
Sure.
You can do everything you wanted to do.
Yeah.
And do you know of anyone you've ever heard of?
Here's the other thing, too. Most rifles, most things made today. I told you I got my first gun. It was an SKS.
Right.
It was a semi-automatic. Had a 6-round clip, one in a chamber, so 7 bullets. If you fired, that was a Chinese-made SKS, 5.56. No, 7.62. Sorry. But if you fired, boom, 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 all 7, by the time the 7th came out of the chamber, your barrel was already red.
Yes.
So there's no way it could hold and be able, and now that was safely shoot more than 7 rounds.
Right. My point is it's just not needed. There's 3 or 4 reasons of why most gun owners will tell you that they want guns, that they want access. Safety is probably number one. Home, personal safety, hunting, sport, hobby. For any of those, I cannot imagine a situation where 12, 15 bullets isn't enough unless you're a drug dealer and you've got a couple of gangs that are breaking into your house. You're not going to need more bullets than that. So why are we allowing this to go on and enabling the people who wants to go into a bar, a movie theater, wherever, a church, and start opening fire? All we're doing is allowing them to have more shots, more bullets.
We're eventually getting rid of, I think, we're in that up.
The bump stocks.
After the Las Vegas thing.
Yes, Las Vegas guy up there. Yeah.
So here's my counter to that. Here's what I would say to that. That's reading the Constitution as it is determined to mean today. Constitution was about, the Second Amendment was about having a militia to defend the people against the government.
Yes. Not defending your home.
Not defending your home. Not hunting.
Not skeet shooting.
Right. That's why I think that if you have the means and you pass the background check, then you should be able to park up an Abrams in your front yard.
Along with the Apache helicopter.
Well, it takes a certain skill to fly an Apache helicopter.
Along with, as long as you are on one of the coast, a nuclear submarine, correct?
Well, I don't know that any one person in the world right now could afford one.
El Chapo. His groups.
Oh, I see.
And actually, I'm sure you've heard, they are using, not nuclear powered, but they are using submarines to move drugs to the United States.
Sure, but here's my thing. I agree that we don't need 30 round clips. Right. Okay? I don't disagree with that. But when people are talking about home defense and with a 30 round clip, right?
Right.
Those aren't people that live here. Those are people that are defending themselves against the gangbangers in Chicago that are popping the AK-47s off all night.
Well, the gangbanger...
Those are criminals for a reason. So they're not going to follow this law anyway.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
I do, but here's the point. If that's the case, then why manufacture hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of guns that we've already agreed there is no need for, other than the illegal group who your only argument is they won't follow your rules anyway. But if we leave it legal, we make it extremely easy for them to get those weapons.
Well, I don't think it's easy in any circumstance, even if for illegal,
to get
a full automatic weapon. You have to go through like a bazillion checks.
No, you don't.
Yes.
No, you don't.
Yes.
No, you don't. Do you know what's illegal? In the United States of America, fully automatic weapons are illegal. You know what is illegal? Semi-automatic weapons.
Uh-huh.
You know what else is legal? Instructions that you can download for free online of how to convert it.
I get that.
That is legal. My brother, several years ago, and I don't think, as far as I know, and I'm actually afraid to ask, I don't think he ever actually did it, but he bought, several years ago, a semi-automatic rifle, and he had heard from someone. He's got a friend that's really into shooting.
Sure.
He's won several contests. He bought the plans, and there was a couple of pieces he had to buy to turn his weapon into a fully automatic. That's legal. Please explain to me how that's smart.
I didn't say it was smart. And his semi-automatic weapon, who is not designed to shoot fully automatic, is not going to last.
Safely.
No, the barrel's going to overheat
and blow up in his face.
It's going to blow up in his face.
Once again, why are we making it easy for these things to happen?
But why do we? This is what it comes down to for me.
Sure.
Why do we have to dumb down all of our rights and I'm not speaking.
We're not dumbing anything down. You've already said there's no need for it in the first place. So what are we dumbing down if there's no need for it? All we're doing is saying let's make the stuff that makes sense that there's a need for. So we're not dumbing anything down if we're not making stuff that we don't need.
Well, back to the example in Chicago.
No, that guy does not. If he's not selling drugs, he does not need 30-plus bullets in one clip just in case the crazy dudes decide to break into his house thinking he is the drug dealer. No, he does not.
Okay.
Give an example of when that happened.
No, you're right. You're right. Let's just do like your Emperor Joe Biden would say to do. Let's just take the double-barrel shotgun, go out on the back porch, fire 2 rounds in the air, which, by the way, in most cities is illegal.
Sure. Not every city.
And if any criminal who's breaking into your house knows anything, they just fired both of their shots into the air. I'm good to break in and do rape, pillage, and do whatever I want.
Well, you're assuming that they have a double barrel, right? Side by side or over and under.
Yeah.
What if they have a pump?
Oh, well, if they have a pump.
Then they got 4 or 5 more shells for you.
I'm just going based on what your king, Joe Biden, said.
Oh, okay.
So
I got you. Guys, let me cover it. To sum it all up. Americans believe very, very strongly in gun rights. I saw an article that said 4 in 10 adults say they live in a household with a gun, 40%. 30% of all Americans say they personally have a firearm. Americans believe very strongly in gun rights. Americans are also very strong in their support of common sense gun control. The reason I love this law that we just passed is, again, we haven't had substantial gun control legislation since 1994. We have to do something. We have to do some of the common sense stuff that the majority of America is behind. As I said earlier, 87% of Americans want universal background checks. 77% want mental health restrictions and family-initiated red flag laws. Again, I said family-initiated. What's being discussed is family and our police departments, and it begins to get a little gray. I agree with you on that.
With the police departments.
I'm not saying I disagree with you there, but some form of red flag. The guy in South Carolina, his mother was begging police to take action, and they couldn't because there was no law on the books.
I believe if your family deems you a threat and is concerned about your personal safety or the safety of others, temporarily, and that's the key.
It's got to be temporary.
Absolutely.
It's not permanent.
Because as we'll get into in a couple of weeks, the government does enough of stealing our stuff.
I agree.
And not giving it back.
Totally agree.
I know you're summarizing and getting ready to end here. You and I will 100% agree on the red flag laws and the background checks. But the reason that I agree for these things, other than the obvious, is that because I believe in the Second Amendment and I believe you should be able to park a tank in your front yard. is because if we don't do something small, and we've talked about this,
Absolutely.
the people who are going to try to come, quote, and I'm using air quotes here, take our guns,
We'll want them all.
will want them all.
I agree 100%.
And that's not going to happen. That would, in my opinion, be the beginnings of a new civil war. I really believe that. In fact, there is one reason, and one reason alone, in World War II, Japan did not land troops on America.
Well, you're going based upon a line from a movie
No,
that was never.
That line from the movie was deemed to be
No, it is not.
accurate
It
to
is not.
Yamamoto. You're
It was
wrong.
never. We'll look it up. There
We'll look it
is
up.
zero proof.
We'll have the answer for you on the
There
next
is
show.
zero proof that Yamamoto ever. Not only did he not say that, he never said anything remotely similar. It's from a movie,
Mhm.
and it is one of the most widely quoted lines. And the quote was, "Behind
Every
every
blade
blade
of
of
grass
grass
is an American with
is
a
an
gun.
American with a gun." Yes. But I totally agree with you. We need to pass some of the common sense stuff. It doesn't truly infringe on Americans' rights, in my opinion, unless you've got mental health issues, unless you're
Now-
a criminal.
I don't disagree also that if you own a gun shop and you want a Gatling gun as a piece of, property and you've passed a bazillion checks,
They can do that.
you should be able to do that.
I agree. I totally agree. And there's places that I've heard of. I don't know of any around here. There's places I've heard of, specifically in Nevada,
Mhm.
where you can go and pay $30 and get to shoot some of these things under
Right.
very close supervision. That would be cool as heck.
Yeah.
Guys, that's my point, is if we truly do believe in gun rights and want to make sure that the gun rights are still here for our children and grandchildren, I think, as Steve said, it's probably of the utmost importance that we pass some common sense gun control laws, and that will make sure that our future generations will have it. Yes.
And it gives me just a glimmer of hope that if Republicans and Democrats can get together on something of this nature,
Amen.
maybe they can get together something of a little more and then a little more,
Very true.
and we can actually start moving our country forward again.
Stop playing party politics and start doing what's right and needed and necessary for the country.
Yep.
100% agree.
So, guys, I guess that will about do it for us tonight.
Yeah, we're pushing our time limit.
We've decided that our 1 hour show
Just
is
isn't
just going to be 1 hour and 15 minutes.
Well, I think today, an hour and 20, right?
Oh, okay.
Or almost?
117.
Okay, yeah.
That's okay. Guys, until next week, we'll see you then. Until then, just be the person your dog thinks you are. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care.